Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, make sure to hit that like button if you love humans proving their worth against impossible odds, drop a comment on what you think will happen next, and of course subscribe so you never miss an epic tale from the far reaches of the galaxy. Now let's jump into our story. The jungle seemed to breathe beneath the alien feet, though the scouts moved with calculated precision, sensors humming and scanning every shadowed leaf. Commander Veilcore, a towering figure of iridescent scales and jointed limbs, paused to survey the expanse before them. His multiple eyes glinted with amusement. "A primitive world," he murmured, voice a rasping whisper that made the smaller scouts flinch. "No structures worth our attention, no predators worth our time. Humans are soft, easily dismissed." Around him, the scouts, sleek, insectoid, confident, shared looks of derision, their claws tapping lightly against the metal of their suits. Veilcore's laughter echoed, sharp and harsh, cutting through the humid air. "They think themselves cunning," he continued, more to himself than to the squad, "yet they cannot even survive their own forests without tools." A scout piped up, attempting humor. "Shall we hunt one for sport, Commander?" The question drew another ripple of laughter. Veilcore's mouth split in a grin, revealing jagged teeth. "Why not?" he said. "It will amuse the council." The dense canopy above filtered the pale light of the planet's sun, casting a mosaic of green shadows that seemed alive with the rustle of creatures unseen. Sensors danced across the spectrum, thermal, motion, life signs, but the data fed back little of significance. The scouts noted only the usual: small mammals, insects, birds, none of which warranted a second thought. Veilcore waved his claws dismissively, signaling the squad to advance, confident that no threat lay ahead. As they moved, the air grew heavier, the silence more pronounced. The usual background noise of jungle life, the call of birds, the chirping of insects, was gone. One scout, uneasy, clicked a mandible in question. "Commander, the readings, they are irregular. Movement but no life forms visible." Veilcore's laughter was instant. "Phantasms of fear," he said. "Or perhaps the jungle itself hides nothing of interest. Keep your sensors active, but do not waste your attention on shadows." They pressed deeper, the undergrowth thickening, vines twisting around the alien boots and claws like living ropes. Every step was deliberate, every leaf bent without a sound. The scouts' confidence, once bright and unshakable, began to falter, though none would admit it aloud. Veilcore's multiple eyes scanned for anomalies, yet he remained unshaken. "Humans fear the wild," he said almost conversationally. "We fear nothing that moves. We will see how these so-called hunters measure up." A ruined structure appeared ahead, partially swallowed by the encroaching jungle. Crumbling walls, scorched metal and collapsed towers gave the impression of abandonment, yet Veilcore's instincts pricked. "A failed human outpost," he said, inspecting the wreckage. "See how fragile they are? No organization lasts against the planet. How do they survive outside such comforts?" The scouts hummed with agreement, eager to believe in the dismissal of their intended prey. Veilcore crouched near the wreckage, scanning the interior. No life signs. No threat. Only the remnants of human ingenuity. He let out a low, satisfied hiss. "Pathetic," he whispered, the sound vibrating through the metal of his armor. And yet, a shadow flickered across the edge of his vision, so brief it might have been a trick of light. Veilcore ignored it. Nothing on the sensors. Nothing in the readings. Just wind and leaves, he reasoned. Still, an unease crept beneath his scales, subtle but persistent. The air felt different, charged in a way that his alien senses struggled to categorize. He gestured for his squad to split and survey the perimeter. Each scout moved, confident yet alert, leaving Veilcore alone with the ruins. He crouched, peering into the darkened doorway of the tallest structure, the shadows within like a promise he could not yet interpret. A rustle to the left made him spin, claws outstretched. Nothing. Just a vine, shaking gently in the humid breeze. Veilcore exhaled slowly, attempting to dismiss the feeling. But the jungle's silence remained, oppressive and watchful. Even the sensors refused to provide clarity. Each moment of stillness stretched longer than it should have, a taut string threatening to snap. He flexed his limbs, trying to shake off the prickling awareness that they were not entirely alone. Suddenly, a sharp snap rang from above. One of the scouts looked up, only to vanish in an instant, leaving a tangle of disturbed leaves drifting to the ground. Veilcore's eyes widened. His heart, or the closest equivalent in his physiology, spiked. "Form a perimeter," he barked, voice sharp as stone. The squad responded instantly, but the rhythm of their movement no longer carried the arrogance of certainty. The jungle had reminded them it could act in ways no sensor could predict. Veilcor's mind raced. He had laughed at humans, at their supposed fragility, at their inability to dominate their environment. Yet as he scanned the treetops, listening to the sudden, unnatural quiet, he felt something new: anticipation. Something intelligent waited. Patient. Watching. The predator was not visible, but it had announced itself without roar or scent or weapon. Its presence alone carried authority. The commander straightened, scales shimmering under the filtered sunlight. "So it begins," he muttered almost reverently. The rest of the squad looked at him, eyes wide. He did not elaborate. Silence fell again, heavier this time. The jungle seemed to close around them, promising trials the scouts had not imagined. And in that stillness, one unspoken truth became clear. The humans of this world were not what they had expected. The hunter was already here. The jungle waited. And Veilcor, for the first time in his long career, realized that underestimating humans might be the gravest mistake an alien could make. The jungle pressed in from all sides, a labyrinth of shadows and tangled foliage. Veilcor's eyes darted across the canopy, noting every movement, every flicker of light, every shift in temperature. The remaining scouts fanned out with caution, scanning for anomalies that defied their sophisticated sensors. Yet the readings remained maddeningly inconsistent. Heat signatures vanished mid-detection, motion patterns dissolved into nothing, and sounds arrived too late to trace their origin. The jungle was no longer a simple environment. It had become an opponent, patient and deliberate. A sudden disturbance drew Veilcor's attention. The underbrush quivered as if something large had passed, yet no life signs registered. The air carried an intangible tension, a weight that pressed against his senses. He flexed his limbs, claws brushing against leaves and bark, and whispered to himself, "This is no ordinary world. Something hunts with patience and intelligence." His scouts mirrored his unease, their earlier arrogance eroding into wary anticipation. The command of the squad rested heavily on him, yet uncertainty crept in like a shadow at the edge of his vision. Veilcor motioned for a halt. The squad froze, every sensor trained forward. Above, the trees were dense, leaves intertwined to form a ceiling of green. A branch snapped silently, a near imperceptible vibration traveling through the air. One scout raised a clawed limb ready to strike, but the movement was gone before it could be confirmed. Veilcor's multiple eyes scanned the treetops, frustration pressing against his patience. "They are clever," he admitted aloud, a rare concession. "Or perhaps, the jungle itself conspires." From a vantage point hidden in the shadows, a figure observed the alien squad with unblinking focus. Elias Crow, human hunter, crouched atop a high branch, eyes like dark coals scanning every movement below. His body was coiled, a perfect blend of stillness and readiness, muscles honed over years of survival in hostile terrain. No advanced weapons glimmered on his frame, just a simple reinforced bow, a quiver of arrows, and a few handcrafted knives strapped to his belt. Each piece of equipment served a precise purpose, and Elias understood every nuance of the jungle as if it were an extension of his own body. The human's philosophy was simple: observe, wait, and strike with precision. Elias had studied the aliens' patterns from afar, noting their overconfidence, their reliance on technology, their arrogance. They assumed the forest was a passive backdrop, a stage for their superiority. They did not realize the jungle could think, could manipulate, could conceal an apex predator who required no enhancements to dominate. Elias's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. They were walking into a lesson they would not survive to remember. Veilcor's squad pressed forward cautiously, attempting to maintain the illusion of control. Drones hovered silently, scanning, illuminating patches of the forest floor, but each attempt to detect movement was thwarted. The jungle seemed to shift with them, branches closing, vines curling, shadows dancing in ways that defied logic. Panic, subtle but present, threaded through the scouts' ranks. Veilcor felt it, and for the first time, a sliver of doubt pierced his confidence. "Commander," one scout hissed, "life signs, disappearing. Where are they going?" Veilcor exhaled through jagged teeth. "They are not running," he replied. "They are hiding. Or planning." His voice held a tight edge of tension he could not entirely mask. He flexed his claws and gestured for tighter formation. "Do not underestimate. They are human. And humans endure." The squad continued, every step deliberate, every motion calculated. Then it happened. A scout vanished again, this time mid-step, leaving only a few disturbed leaves tumbling to the forest floor. Alarmed clicks and hisses echoed through the squad, and Veilcore's eyes narrowed, scanning upward. A single arrow, thin and nearly invisible, protruded from the bark of a tree just beyond reach. No human figure was visible. No energy signatures. Just a clean, silent mark of presence. Veilcore's thoughts raced. Humans had no natural weaponry capable of this level of precision, or so he had assumed. The jungle had become an extension of their cunning, each branch and vine a tool in their arsenal. He realized with a growing edge of fear that the predator had already decided how this confrontation would unfold. It was patient, calculating, invisible. Elias watched another scout approach the arrow. He adjusted his stance slightly, pulling back into the shadows, preparing for the next phase. He had no desire to kill indiscriminately. The lesson was enough. Alien arrogance had a way of collapsing when exposed to human ingenuity. Every movement he made was deliberate, every placement calculated to instill doubt and fear. The forest had become his ally, each tree a silent accomplice, each shadow a collaborator in the hunt. The alien squad began to realize the pattern. Every step forward yielded nothing but emptiness. Sensors failed. Motion was anticipated and neutralized before it became a threat. The jungle was alive in a way they could not quantify. Veilcore's earlier confidence had morphed into a tense awareness. They had underestimated the human, and the realization cut through him sharper than any blade. The day waned, the filtered sunlight fading into streaks of amber through the canopy. Veilcore called a halt, trying to maintain command. "We regroup," he barked, though the firmness of his voice belied the tension he felt. Every scout took a position, scanning, watching, yet unwilling to admit the creeping fear that had settled in their chests. The jungle waited, patient and deliberate. Elias remained still, a shadow within shadows, observing the alien commander. The humans of this planet had long understood the principle that power alone was insufficient against knowledge and patience. And here it was, unfolding exactly as predicted. The aliens were overconfident, predictable, and entirely vulnerable. As darkness began to press against the forest, Veilcore's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, almost imperceptible motion above him. A leaf shifted. A branch twitched. Then silence. The tension hung thick, a promise of lessons yet to come. The aliens were no longer hunters. They had become prey in a world they had assumed was tame. The forest seemed to exhale, a quiet pulse of anticipation. Veilcore tightened his stance, scanning upward and around him, knowing instinctively that this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the trees, the human hunter waited, unseen but present, already shaping the outcome of a confrontation the aliens had believed would be trivial. And in that moment, the first unmistakable truth settled into Veilcore's mind. The predators of this world were not the creatures with claws and fangs. They were the humans, patient, cunning, and invisible, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Veilcore's squad advanced with unnatural caution, their confidence eroded by the unrelenting patience of the unseen hunter. Every step they took seemed anticipated, every movement countered before it could manifest. The forest had become a living trap, a maze of shadows and shifting branches, each element designed to unsettle, disorient, and isolate. Veilcore's claws flexed, instinct and training clashing with a creeping realization. This was no ordinary hunt, and humans were far more dangerous than any predator they had catalogued. From above, Elias Crow observed the squad like a conductor watching his orchestra. He had spent minutes studying their patrol patterns, noting the reliance on sensors and the predictable spacing between them. Every scout who separated from the formation created an opportunity. Elias adjusted his position silently, dropping a simple camouflage trap into the path of a lone scout ahead. A thin, almost invisible wire stretched across a narrow trail, anchored to jagged rocks and concealed by leaves. He didn't need to kill immediately. The trap's purpose was fear, confusion, and the erosion of alien certainty. The scout stepped forward, unaware. There was a soft snap, a flutter of leaves, and suddenly its foot snagged. The wire tightened, jerking it off balance and sending it sprawling into the underbrush. Sensors detected nothing out of the ordinary, just a momentary motion. Veilcore spun toward the sound, claws extended, but before he could react, the scout was gone, vanished as completely as if the forest itself had swallowed it. Panic rippled through the remaining squad, subtle at first but undeniable. Veilcore's multiple eyes darted, searching for anomalies, for the source of the disappearance. "Do not let them scatter," he hissed, the hiss vibrating through the canopy. "They are human. They adapt. They endure. And they are hunting us now." The words were spoken with urgency, but even he knew they barely captured the magnitude of what was unfolding. He signaled for tighter formation, dragging the remaining scouts into the semblance of security, yet the illusion was fragile. Elias watched another scout edge forward to investigate the disturbance. He let the moment stretch, tension coiling in the air like a drawn bowstring. Then, with a flick of his wrist, a small rock dislodged from a branch, falling with a precise, controlled clatter a few meters away. The scout froze, scanning for the origin, claws flexing. Every sensor in its body worked overtime, yet it could not detect the human hidden above. Elias allowed a fraction of a second to pass before descending slightly, still hidden, eyes calculating. Another minor disturbance. An arrow knocked into a tree trunk mere inches from the scout, heightened the alien's uncertainty without causing harm. Veilcor's mind raced. He had believed himself a predator among weak creatures, a commander among foolish hunters. Now he realized the predator was not visible, not glaring with fangs or claw, but orchestrating from shadows, moving through the jungle like a ghost. The scouts whispered among themselves in clicks and hisses, their technology useless, their instincts challenged and their arrogance shattered. Every moment that passed without clarity eroded confidence, replacing it with dread. Elias shifted silently from branch to branch, careful not to expose himself. He had no desire to strike directly yet. The hunt was more than survival, it was education, a demonstration of what humans could accomplish without overwhelming strength or flashy weaponry. Each maneuver, each subtle disturbance, was a statement. The jungle was their ally, patience was their weapon, and knowledge was the blade sharper than any energy sword. The squad tried to respond. One scout fired a pulse of energy at a rustling shadow, but it was immediately deflected by an overhanging branch, or so it appeared. The sensor feedback was garbled, registering movement but no target. Veilcor growled, frustration mounting, realizing that his reliance on technology was now a liability. "Stop reacting to the environment," he bellowed. "Predict it. Dominate it. Human cunning is nothing, yet they are forcing it upon us." Elias's plan intensified. He allowed a faint trail of disturbances to form, leading one overconfident scout away from the main group. A careful placement of sharpened stakes, hidden beneath the brush, ensured the scout would be incapacitated without immediate detection. When it stepped into the trap, there was a muffled cry, a flash of confusion and then silence. The remaining scouts froze, scanning wildly, the jungle swallowing their fallen companion without explanation. Veilcor's mental equilibrium trembled. The principles he had relied upon for centuries, superior senses, technology, organization, were failing. He flexed his claws, ready to strike at any perceived threat, yet he could see nothing. His mind, trained to dominate weaker species, struggled to adapt. He realized that in this encounter, the predator was not merely a creature. It was strategy itself, a manifestation of patience, terrain mastery, and human ingenuity. Night began to descend, filtered through the thick canopy in dim shafts of amber light. Veilcor ordered a temporary halt, forming a tight, defensive perimeter around the central clearing. Scouts trembled slightly, adjusting positions, but all were acutely aware that they were being hunted rather than hunting. The silence of the forest was no longer passive. It was active, deliberate, filled with unseen presence. From above, Elias surveyed the formation. He had already dictated the tempo, isolated their members, and instilled doubt. Every detail mattered, and the human hunter knew the alien's frustration would compound into mistakes if allowed to fester. He did not move yet. There was no need. The lesson was far from over. Each motionless shadow, each invisible trap, each subtle indication of human presence was enough to unravel their confidence. Veilcor's gaze swept the treetops, frustration and fascination mingling. "They do not fight with strength," he murmured almost to himself. "They fight with patience, with cunning, with the forest itself." A subtle tension coiled in his chest as he realized the truth. Humans did not need to roar or display. They merely existed within their terrain, shaping the outcome silently, invisibly, lethally. A distant snap, faint yet distinct, echoed through the canopy. The remaining scouts stiffened, weapons raised, hearts, or the closest equivalent, racing. The human hunter had begun to strike indirectly, and Veilcor knew that the first visible casualty would signal the start of the true hunt. The forest, once a passive backdrop, had become a battlefield defined not by brute force but by intellect, strategy, and patient observation. And in that stillness, as night wrapped the jungle in its shadowed embrace, Veilcor realized that the humans of this world were not just survivors. They were hunters unlike any the galaxy had encountered. And they were already winning. Veilcor's senses were on edge, every nerve taut as the forest seemed to close in from all directions. The remaining scouts huddled, weapons at the ready, scanning shadows that concealed nothing visible yet hinted at constant, deliberate movement. The jungle's silence pressed against them like a living wall, and for the first time, the commander felt a pang of doubt pierce his carefully maintained arrogance. He had underestimated humans. And that error was no longer theoretical, it was imminent. From the treetops, Elias Crow observed the squad with cold, precise calculation. No energy beams, no flashy weapons, only the tools he had honed for survival and lethality. Every movement he had made so far had been to fragment their formation, isolate individuals and instill fear. Now the time had come for action. One scout strayed too close to a narrow ravine, drawn by curiosity or overconfidence, and Elias released a rope snare that swung down with silent precision. The alien was yanked from its footing, caught mid-fall, and a muted scream was cut short as it vanished into the shadows below. Veilcor's multiple eyes narrowed, claws flexing, mind racing. His squad's panic was spreading, subtle but undeniable. "Hold your formation," he hissed, voice trembling only slightly. "They are human. They strategize. Do not break. Do not scatter." The words sounded more like a plea than a command. He had expected challenge, yes, but not this level of unseen orchestration, not this mastery of the environment by a single predator. Elias moved with deliberate patience, every step a silent note in a symphony of chaos. He let another scout advance, luring it into a trap disguised as a fallen tree. The alien collided with the obstacle and fell into a concealed pit lined with sharpened stakes. Its panicked cries echoed briefly before the forest swallowed them completely. Veilcor's chest tightened, the sensation unfamiliar and unwelcome. Humans had no biological advantage, no natural strength that could surpass his species. Yet here they were, dominating with intellect, patience and mastery of terrain. The commander rose, scanning the canopy with the intensity of a predator cornered yet unwilling to admit defeat. His claws glinted in the fragmented sunlight, and his mandibles clicked with tension. "Show yourself," he demanded, voice cutting through the still air. The only response was silence, punctuated by faint rustles that seemed deliberately orchestrated to mock him. Elias remained unseen, a phantom among leaves, every action calibrated to ensure that Veilcor's frustration mounted without offering any immediate target. A sudden sharp whistling sound drew Veilcor's attention upward. He caught a fleeting glimpse of movement, too fast and precise to be a simple animal. An arrow, tipped with a compound alloy, embedded itself into a nearby tree mere inches from his claw. It was a message rather than a threat, a quiet statement. The hunter was here, invisible and capable. The alien commander flexed his claws, aware for the first time that his advantage was gone. Elias shifted to another branch, careful to remain concealed, observing Veilcor's reaction. The commander's mind was a whirl of strategy and disbelief, trying to reconcile the reality of human cunning with his ingrained belief in superiority. Every alien instinct screamed to dominate, to strike first, yet every move forward risked another unseen trap. Elias allowed a moment of stillness to stretch, a calculated pause that amplified tension and forced the commander to overthink, to hesitate. The alien squad attempted to regroup, forming a tighter defensive circle, but the forest had already claimed its advantage. Another scout advanced to investigate a suspicious sound, only to be ensnared by a hidden vine mechanism, pulled high into the canopy where it dangled helplessly, silent and immobilized. Veilcor roared, a sound meant to inspire courage, but it rang hollow even to his own ears. Fear, subtle yet pervasive, had begun to infiltrate the squad. Elias descended closer, moving with an almost imperceptible grace, preparing for the decisive moment. He did not attack immediately. This was about leverage, about ensuring the aliens realized the futility of their arrogance before the strike truly began. A well-placed tripwire triggered a falling log, sending one scout sprawling into thick underbrush, disoriented and vulnerable. The commander's mental control over the situation slipped further, and he realized the truth he had avoided. They were being hunted, not hunting. Veilcor's breathing, or the closest equivalent, accelerated. He flexed claws and tried to scan for the human, every tool and sensor now useless against a foe who moved without detection, who struck with knowledge rather than brute force. "Humans endure because they adapt," he muttered, more to himself than the squad. "And they adapt faster than any predator I have faced." The words were a grim recognition, a confession of respect begrudgingly earned. From above, Elias loosed a single, precise arrow. It struck a tree near Veilcor's claw, the impact reverberating as a warning rather than a fatal blow. The commander snarled, reflexively striking at the arrow's origin, but found nothing. The forest itself seemed to conspire with Elias, each shadow, each leaf, each movement designed to heighten tension and erode confidence. The lesson was clear: humans need no roar, no strength, no overwhelming force to dominate. Patience, intelligence, and intimate knowledge of their environment were enough. Night descended fully, bringing with it the cool, oppressive weight of the jungle. Veilcor called a halt, forming a defensive perimeter with his remaining scouts. The forest, alive with the promise of unseen action, pressed in from every side. The commander's pride was wounded, but not entirely shattered. He still sought the hunter, still sought to regain control, but he knew the confrontation had changed. The humans of this world were no longer invisible, no longer theoretical threats. They were tangible, lethal, and entirely unpredictable. Elias observed the formation, poised like a shadow waiting for the exact moment to strike. The hunter had dictated the tempo, isolated the aliens, and established psychological dominance without firing a lethal shot. Veilcor's arrogance had been methodically dismantled, and the forest had become the human's ally. Every rustle, every subtle sound, every manipulation of the environment reinforced the inescapable truth. The predator was not the one with claws or armor, it was the human. Veilcor flexed his claws, scanning the shadows one last time. "This is only the beginning," he hissed, voice low, acknowledging the hunter's supremacy in tone if not yet in action. Elias remained unseen, a phantom among the branches, the embodiment of human patience and precision. The forest exhaled, silent and knowing, as the first decisive phase of the hunt reached its climax. The lesson had begun. Veilcor's breath, shallow, sharp, and measured through his mandibles, filled the tense air. The remaining scouts huddled behind him, trembling despite their armored exoskeletons. The forest had transformed completely. It was no longer a backdrop but an omnipresent force, alive with anticipation, silent yet deliberate. Each shadow hinted at movement, every rustle a calculated threat. Veilcor knew, deep within his instincts honed over countless hunts, that the hunter's presence dominated the field entirely. From above, Elias Crow observed, perched like a dark silhouette against the thick canopy. His body was relaxed, yet every muscle remained coiled, ready to act with lethal precision. The forest had become an extension of himself, each branch and leaf obeying his unspoken command. He had orchestrated the entire engagement, fragmenting the alien formation, isolating targets, and eroding confidence before any strike was necessary. Now he would reveal himself, not with overwhelming firepower, but with deliberate clarity, ensuring the lesson would resonate. Veilcor's eyes scanned the shadows, searching desperately, claws flexing. "Show yourself," he demanded, voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and grudging respect. The jungle answered not with sound, but with a silence so absolute that it seemed to hum with latent menace. Then, from the high branches, a single figure descended, human, unarmed in the traditional sense, yet radiating authority and control. Elias landed softly, barely a whisper against the forest floor, and met Veilcor's gaze without fear. For a moment time stretched. Veilcor assessed the human, weighing instinct against reason, arrogance against dawning comprehension. He saw no heavy armor, no weapon capable of overpowering his species. Yet the confidence, the control, the precision in that stance spoke louder than any energy pulse. Here stood a predator the galaxy had never anticipated, not defined by strength, size, or technology, but by intellect, patience, and intimate understanding of his environment. Elias spoke, calm and measured. "You came to judge us by our cities, by our machines, by our supposed fragility. You should have judged us by what still thrives where civilization dares not go." His voice carried authority, unyielding and precise, piercing the tension like a blade. Veilcor's mandibles clicked in thought. He realized in that moment that all his preconceptions of dominance were inadequate. A distant clatter echoed through the underbrush as one of the remaining scouts faltered, entrapped by a hidden snare. Veilcor's attention snapped back to the forest, the realization sharp and immediate. His squad was diminished, scattered, and entirely at the mercy of a human who seemed to control the battlefield without exposure. The alien commander's pride battled with survival instinct, and he understood that any rash action could mean the extinction of his remaining forces. Elias advanced a few steps, careful to remain measured, ensuring Veilcor understood that aggression was not necessary. "The galaxy believes strength rules," he continued. But strength without knowledge, without strategy, without patience, is meaningless. The hunter does not reveal himself until the prey has learned its folly. The words resonated, embedding themselves in the alien commander's mind with unrelenting clarity. Veilcore flexed claws, forced to acknowledge respect he had never thought he would feel for a human. "You are not like any prey I have encountered," he admitted, voice low and laced with grudging awe. "You fight without revealing, strike without announcing, and yet dominate." There was no malice in the statement, only recognition, a rare admission of a lesson learned. From the treetops, other hunters, wildlife, shadows, and the subtle manipulations of the forest itself watched silently, aligned with the human presence. Elias's strategy had transformed the environment into an extension of his will, erasing the alien's advantage in one elegant, invisible stroke. Veilcore could sense it. Every decision now belonged to Elias. Every movement, every opportunity, every mistake could be manipulated with precision. The alien commander raised a claw, a gesture of acknowledgement, a silent ceasefire of sorts. "You have bested us without engaging fully," he hissed. "Perhaps the galaxy should reconsider what it deems threats." Elias inclined his head slightly, a small acknowledgement that this confrontation was not about cruelty but education, dominance defined not by destruction but understanding. Veilcore activated a communicator, sending a message to the Galactic Council. Sensor logs, images of fallen scouts, and the unmistakable evidence of human mastery transmitted instantly. The Council's response would be immediate, seismic in its consequences. This was not a minor skirmish. This was proof that humans, underestimated for millennia, were apex predators in their own right, silent, patient, unstoppable when their terrain was familiar. As the night deepened, Veilcore watched Elias slip back into the forest shadows, nearly invisible even in close proximity. The human had made his point without chaos, without unnecessary bloodshed, and yet the lesson was indelible. The jungle belonged to the hunter. The aliens had arrived thinking themselves superior, only to learn that dominance could manifest in patience, strategy, and profound understanding of one's environment. From orbit, alien probes would soon observe Earth. Reports would arrive of a world that refused intrusion, where species that appeared weak could orchestrate the downfall of technologically superior forces. The Galactic Council would debate, but the evidence was irrefutable. Humans were predators beyond expectation, their advantage not in weapons but in intellect, patience, and adaptability. Veilcore flexed his claws one final time, a gesture both of acceptance and lingering tension. "This world is not ours to command," he whispered, his multiple eyes scanning the still forest. The lesson was burned into memory, a truth unavoidable and humbling. And somewhere above, hidden in the canopy, Elias Crow observed the alien's acknowledgement, a silent guardian of a world that refused to yield. The forest exhaled in quiet triumph, leaves rustling softly, shadows blending seamlessly with the night. The humans had endured, and in enduring, they had dominated without spectacle, without exaggeration, and without fear. Veilcore and his scouts retreated, defeated yet alive, carrying back a lesson to the galaxy. Underestimate humanity at your peril. As the alien vessels lifted from the jungle, the last rays of sunlight glinted off Elias's bow, perfectly still, perfectly patient. The predator of Earth remained unseen by the cosmos, yet wholly present in the minds of those who had dared to judge it. The story of their survival, their strategy, and their mastery would ripple across the stars, a warning, a declaration, and a celebration of human ingenuity. The jungle settled into silence once more, but its message was clear. Humans were hunters the galaxy could not ignore. And the apex predator of this world slept, silent, watchful, and invincible.